Hey, here's one way to outline your rhetorical analysis essay. Make it very simple for you. What you could do on the first page is have an introduction that includes the context and the thesis statement. If you look at your first page, you realize about a third of it, maybe a little bit less, has all your header information. So really you only have time for one large paragraph left. And in this paragraph, you're going to do these things: provide context and thesis statement. So you need to provide context about the author, about the subject, meaning the topic they're talking about, and describe just a little bit about the setting or the thing that prompted them to write. So imagine that someone who found this essay on the ground picked it up. They'd have at least a little bit of context for what the issue is, who the author is, and why they're writing about it. Okay? That should set up and lead to your thesis statement. And the thesis statement should, of course, completely answer both elements of the prompt. This prompt is: what strategies did they use? What's their purpose, and what strategies did they use? So your thesis statement needs to mention both of those things, and your thesis statement should be perfect. And if you're doing all these things right, this will take the first page. Okay? So that'll take up about 150 to 250 words. Probably not much longer than that. Okay, pages 2 through 3 are your body paragraphs. In your body paragraphs, you need to have topic sentences. The topic sentences preview the idea of that paragraph. A good idea might be to mention the strategy. Something like, another way they use this strategy is by mentioning veterans. Okay, so it just gives us a hint, a preview of what that paragraph's going to be about. You need to set up your evidence. Let me give you an example for this. Here's a little church example, I guess. Let's say that you're giving a talk and you want to give a quote from Nephi. There's a good way to give a quote and a bad way to give a quote. Here's a bad way to give a quote. There's a quote in Nephi that says that I will go and do the things. That's a bad way to give the quote. Here's a better way to give a quote. Nephi was commanded by God to build a boat. He didn't know how to build a boat, and he didn't want to because he was afraid his brothers would make fun of him. But rather than give up, he said, quote, I will go and do. Basically, setting up the evidence means giving a tiny bit of context to set it up. Even if everyone knows the story and knows the quote, it always helps to provide a little bit of context. Do this for each one of your quotes. You can do this by saying something like, later in their essay, they mention blah, 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 blah. Right? So just set up the quote, give it some evidence. And then quote the evidence. You need to actually have quotes here. Okay? And then explain the evidence. Put on your Captain Obvious hat and explain it like you're talking to a smart person who doesn't know what you're thinking. My job when I read your essay is to not think. My job is to look at your thoughts. So if you think a quote is self-explanatory, if you don't explain it, it's not self-explanatory. My only job as a reader is to see what you're thinking. I'm not going to make any conclusions about the evidence unless you tell me to. So whatever you say in your essay is what I'm going to think. So never think a quote is self-explanatory, because if you don't explain it, you don't get credit for it. And obviously the evidence should connect to your thesis statement. And these 3 body paragraphs should be about 350 to 550 words total. Not each paragraph, but like all 3 paragraphs combined. Which leads us to our conclusion. Conclusions are the hardest thing to write about, and I'm not going to grade them that difficult for this. Pay more attention to everything else. But mention kind of maybe the larger implications of the strategies they use. Basically just get out gracefully. Maybe you can talk about their audience and why they used those strategies. So that's a basic formula you can follow for your rhetorical analysis essay. Remember, I do not want to know your personal opinion about the author or what they're talking about. You got to talk about it objectively. I shouldn't know whether you're for or against it. I want to know what strategies they use. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.